Hello, 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 everybody. This is Jeremy in your face. This is our first, hopefully long night of series of episodes like this, where we're gonna crack open the Codex or Battle Tomes for AOS and like just do like a quick maybe hour long run through of like the rules and because I don't really give a shit about the lore. I mean, I enjoy reading the lore, but we don't play this game. I don't play this game for the lore reasons as much as some other people would. I play this game because I love the game. So uh, I have the Deathguard Codex today to talk about. I have taken almost zero look at the Warhammer community like sneak peek photos. So this is like coming really from fresh eyes. I did spend about maybe like 40 minutes right before the show going over some of the rules to see if there was any kind of initial you know what's it called, reaction faces I could prepare for this, but no, it was just I just wanted to make sure structurally where the hell the rules are and if they change anything fundamentally from where they put everything inside the rule. So one big change I did notice in this is the fact that they still want to keep putting the damn Crusade rules in between the rules and the data sheets. Yeah, we're gonna read along together, Andrew, for sure. I just thought it was I just like, why keep sticking the Crusade rules right in the smack dab of Games Workshop really wants us to play Crusade. I guess they're like, you can't skip this section. You got, if there's no the linear path is here's the rules, and here's Crusade rules, and then here's all the data sheets. It's really actually kind of obnoxious. I wish they would stop that and just put the Crusade rules either at the back or before the actual real rules. But it makes sense. They really want us to play Crusade. They want this to be a campaign narrative style game instead of who really actually pays them the big bucks at the end of the day, which is tournament players. All right, let's start with the one they did put the chapter proof rules really early in the book. I don't think it was like that for the Necron book or the Space Marine book. And let me transition over to my old handheld camera. There we go. Cool. So the chapter approved section now is basically just where the secondaries are for the missions, the new ones for each basically sub-faction. I was kind of shocked they only got 3 for the Deathguard. I mean, typically it's 3 to 4. The reason why I'm pretty sure they gave him only 3 is because, well, 2 of them are amazing, one of them is terrible. They're just they're very chunky secondaries in terms of rules writing. The No Mercy No Respite fleeing vectors, not that good. Not that good. You get 3 victory points at the end of the game if any units failed morale test this battle round that has 1 or more models destroyed by attacks made with plague weapons this battle round. It's incredibly but firstly you have to fail a battle shock or morale test. I think most things we're gonna get targeted with plague weapons are probably gonna try to kill it, not just gonna leave that guy alive so they can take that morale test for 3 points. Probably not going to see a lot of play, especially since it competes with a bunch of other secondaries, which are just vastly superior in that section. But cool, fluffy, I guess. And then I got Battlefield Supremacy, and it's the Spoiled Ground. Now, the Spoiled Ground is very good. The way it works is basically if you achieve all these criteria at the end of the game, you win, you get these points. And they're actually, I would argue, very well priced in terms of point value because they're effectively, yeah, I do need a book stand. They're effectively 4 points, in one of them is 6 points. So even if you achieve 2 of these, it's still pretty good. If you achieve 3 of these, then you're pretty much almost guaranteed to get max points. And the way they work is you get 4 points if you effectively have 3 1 or more your units inside the opponent's deployment zone while having 1 inside your deployment zone. And then you also get 4 points if you own 3 different table quarters. And if you own all table quarters, you get 6 points. So basically the book wants you to have a units across the table, survive, and you get a base effectively 10 points. So if you're playing MSU, basically Plague, Deathguard, it's going to be a very lucrative mission because it Battlefield Supremacy. The only options are Dominion, Endless Engage on all front, which really are the only options for Deathguard. So this one just basically really works very well because it is Engage on all front plus Dominion, because they have also a section about how they will basically, if they control more than half the objectives at the end of the game, but the problem it has, by the way, bubonic starting means just basically Deathguard Deathguard Space Marine models. They get another 4 points, and if every objective is in range of a contingent ability, which we'll go over later, they also get 4 points. And that one's actually interesting because it's fairly easy to achieve if you have units survive by the end of the game. So this is looking like I will be honest, like probably on 12-point average score, as long as you don't get tabled. Basically, it's the way it comes down to. And then we got Spread the Sickness, which is also very good in terms of it's basically a better version of Raise the Banners. The only difference is Raise the Banners, you can keep doing it to the same objective. And this one, sorry, I wanted to address, for some reason, like, Andrew, your chat keeps getting copied over and over. I don't know why. And I can't tell if it's my end or your end, but it's probably my end. Yeah, we'll talk about Poxwalkers and MSU built type lists. I actually think like more MSU Plague Marines might be the better solution, more than Poxwalkers. I think you're probably gonna see one big unit of Poxwalker for some stratagem shenanigans we'll cover, but like it's probably gonna be MSU Space Marines because you need the bubonic Astartes keyword for this secondary to work. Now the Spread the Sickness is pretty cool. Like I said, it's kind of like it competes with Raise the Banner. And the same section, but it is basically a better version of it. You can only do it once per objective. You can't repeat it, but you do get effectively 3 victory points for each marker you've done this. And you have a choice. You can either gamble and on a 4-up, you basically contaminated the objective, or you could just take D3 mortal wounds and the objective is automatically contaminated. So I like it's kind of I like the sneakiness of like, oh, I could just gamble, but it's like nobody's gonna do that. Like the point is to get those points. I guess you could do it on your home objective if you have a unit like camping in. You're just like, I'm gonna take this action every time anyway. So that's, so far so good. 2 amazingly good secondaries and 1 pretty much garbage. It's really what it comes down to. And we're going to transition into the actual like detachment abilities, and yeah, you can see my scotch here. Plague Marines, Plague Companies, and so forth. So a couple of things that are very cool. I like a lot. It doesn't really matter, but I think it introduces some really cool list building play. So Fetid Virion is basically all of the advisors. So like the surgeon, the toll taker, all the basically kind of like weirdly like small characters, lieutenant style characters, or cryptech version of Deathguard. They basically can take 3 for 1 elite slot, which is really cool because I think you're gonna see a lot more patrols now because of that rule. Because you don't necessarily need the 3 troop options for Deathguard, but from a battalion, but it gives patrol a bit of a options, because you can still take 1 elite of 3 of these and then 1 more elite choice for something like Terminated. They just cover that you can only have the amount of Poxwalker equal to the amount of bubonic Astartes core infantry keyword. So there's like some limitation. There's also like you can only have 1 Lord of the Deathguard and 1 Demon Prince per detachment. So it's just it's just kind of some limitations, which I don't think like nobody was playing and taking a huge advantage of that. And then I mean, if you were, I don't think it was necessarily that good for you. And then Exarbral Advance was just now they count as remain stationary as long as they don't fall back or run. The vehicles never suffer the penalty for fighting heavy weapon moving, and infantry keyword ignore all modifiers to move characters, advance rolls, and charge rolls. So things like Tanglefoot grenades from Custodes won't prevent them, don't modify their charge run roll. Pretty cool. That's a really cool ability. I like that. It fits the lore, and it's also competitive. So that's nice. And then we have the Plague Companies, and I kind of like the way they're doing it in this book versus some of the other books. they went for like there was a lot of plate companies, and they kind of like really condensed them to be like, hey, instead of having like a full page or like nearly a page for each basically secondary, let's just drop these like small little like boxes and just cover like, yeah, here's a warlord trait, here's a relic, and here's the stratagem. That's all you need to know. All right. uh the Harbingers are the first company. Basically, Typhus is a plate company. Not amazing, not bad. Like one of the things we'll talk about is how good some of the some of the Deathguard stuff is in close combat. And I do really like the Raffle Dead because there is a stratagem in the book, another one, that it's the Poxwalkers do mortal wounds on 6s to hit. So anything where it just lets them reroll the hit roll is amazing because you can just like that one turn they get in common, they're like, all right, here comes like, and they're not limited on the mortal wounds. There is a downside to it, but they're not limited to the mortal wounds. So they're just gonna like, they can really punk somebody pretty heavily if you get caught off guard with that 2 CP investment. Now, cool thing is all of the warlord traits for plate companies are basically a contagion rule. Contagion. They're not an actual like. So contagions are effectively like aura specific debuffs or buffs. Most of the contagions are debuffs. And for this one, it's just whoops, knocked my book a little bit. It just does a mortal wound to like basically units effectively and nearby. So it's an offensive contagion. The relic is okay. Like giving an objective contagion rules can be useful, but and for the audience, I this is why I don't like the flow of this book rules. You're like 2 pages in here, and they're talking about contagion rules, and you're like, what the fuck are contagion rules? Well, they're actually way further in the book. So contagion rules are effectively progressively increasing in range depending on the turn number, and they lower the toughness of enemy models by 1 if they're in range of the contagion. And then there's also other types of contagion depending on like the warlord trait. So if this model has the -1 contagion plus this contagion as well. You have a stratagem that you can spend to give a unit for 1 turn a contagion that it does not have from another unit. So you could technically spread a warlord trait contagion to another unit for 1 turn, and it also gives them the ability to count as 1 turn above the current game turn for the range aura. So it starts at 1 inch, then 3 inches, then 6 inches, and then 9 inches. Anyway, plate company number 2. This one's not. I actually really like this one. It gives you a stratagem that basically makes an enemy unit -2 to charge. That's always useful, especially if you're more like a shooty style Deathguard list, not necessarily a melee style. And then the Contagion ability is just basically your armor penetration of your weapons gets increased by 1 against targets within range of this warlord contagion. So like if you think about like turn 3, turn 4. When the aura is like 6 and 9 inches, you can clip a bunch of units, and all of a sudden all your weapons are minus an additional AP against them. So pretty strong. The relic is okay, like just heals wounds on vehicles. It's not like you'll notice none of these like are like amazingly like significantly like auto take. The third battle plate company, I think, is probably the one a lot of people are going to be playing. We'll see, but so basically, there's a stratagem that lets you basically heroic intervene for a unit, which is incredibly useful, especially if you're playing a more melee focused plague marine army. But their contagion, aka the warlord trait, is incredibly powerful. It is, you cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend if you're within range of it, and you lose the ability to reroll hits or wound rolls. So like it just completely negates like aura mechanics, just like some of the most powerful aura mechanics. It doesn't really negate too much of the Necron ones because they mostly do plus modifiers to hit or rolls. But like against Space Marines, it just like turns off all of their reroll mechanics. And then their relic is actually not that bad, especially on like the Lord of Contagions and so forth. Like just having straight up reroll hit and wounds, and their Men Reapers are pretty nasty. So it's like this was a really good plate company. Now we got the Wretch, which is kind of more of the Psyker heavy, like basically plate company. They're oh man, let me put my elbow down. Maybe this will help. Hey, wait, look at that. So their contagion is basically when you hit it, hit with anything or any attacks at a unit inside contagion range, you automatically win them if you were to hit a roll of a 6. Pretty powerful. There is a Plague Marine banner that lets them do that with bolt guns, but this just affects them with all attacks. So that is very good. And obviously, the Warlord trait just, it's kind of funny. I think it's basically the same thing as the Psyker Lieutenant they get, which is like if you roll above a 7 or 7 or more, you do a mortal wound in a unit. This one just does the same thing, but it's D3 mortal wounds. So it's just on a 7 it does D3 instead of 1. So it does stack. So I believe like if you put on that same ability, so it would do like effectively D3 plus 1 mortal wound to a unit. And then I think the other one also, if you roll above a 10 or higher, it does D3 instead of 1. So you could potentially do 2d3 mortal wounds on top of like whatever caster. So it has some potential. This one's not bad. It's hard to argue about the other contagion. Like just shutting off Overwatch and reroll mechanics is fairly powerful. Boxmongers, they're basically the Demon Engine like plague company. Like everything in there is related to Demon Engine. I didn't see anything that was like super phenomenally strong, except like their stratagem lets them basically shoot in melee with blast weapons, which is cool. But I think you're gonna see a lot less plague crawlers and more of the smaller Demon Engines, and because they're pretty scary in melee as well. The Ferryman, this one's interesting because it's like increasing aura range affects both contagion and some of the other mechanics that some of the characters have. So you could like that 1 CP basically means that like your contagion auras all become like 12 inches and depending on the turn, and that's fairly powerful. You also, the Warlord trait is just like you just basically have movement speed of enemy units. So you could really shut down like, the ability to move for somebody and get on the board, and it's just a really good board control like mechanic. The Relic's pretty scary in melee. Like it just the difference between that and a Man Reaper is it does 3 hits instead of 1 with the scythe attack. That's about it. Mortarian's Chosen Son, the 7th play company. They're honestly like when I was thinking when I first read this book, I was like, they might actually be useful, but without building lists, it's hard to tell because the way their stratagem works, like having play all of the flame weapons effectively get damage too, is interesting, mostly because they're all plague weapons, so they get to reroll 1s anyway to wound, and then making them damage 2, and then there's another stratagem that makes them an additional 6-inch range. So you could have like some 18-inch range like flamer weapons with like damage 2, which against Space Marine or Marine equivalent sounds very good to me. So we'll see. Yeah, it just removes cover benefits for contagion. Like I don't know, it's cool, but we'll see if it sticks around. Like it's completely list dependent. All right, stratagems. I haven't got any questions yet, so I'm gonna keep chugging through this book. So trench fighters, it's actually a really good command point stratagem for army, for basically some of the Plague Marines units. If you just basically decided to take a bunch of Plague Knives, the problem with it is, I believe, you can have one guy have 2 Plague Knives, I believe, and then everybody else is a Plague Knife. But anyway, they don't have Shock Doctrine, right? They don't have the 1 extra attack in the first round of combat like Space Marines do. So this is just like a 1 CP. We haven't gotten to Relic, Alex, yet, but we will. We have. Oh, you're talking from the Plague Company. Oh, Plague Company Relic is definitely the third one, which is the reroll every hit rune roll in combat. I think that's incredibly good. trench fighters, just it basically is just it's a very limited like version of Shock Doctrine for Plague Marines. It gives them the extra attack for Plague Knives. So, I mean, it doesn't limit it to like any. It's any time you want. It's not limited to one turn, but it's since we'll go over the Plague Marine data sheet, but it's a fairly good one. Yeah, those were all sub-faction specific. We haven't actually gone to the generalized relic page. Like I said, this book's order of operation of introducing rules is very weird to me because they talk a lot about mechanics that are not even introduced until like the later part of the book, which is fine. I think we're all past that at that point, but from a design perspective, it seems to be problematic. They have Creeping Blight, which is pretty cool too. When a plague weapon rules of 6 to wound, it has AP -4. That can the combination of that with the knives and the sheer amount of attacks and the reroll mechanics can be fairly terrifying. It's just I don't know if it's like necessarily that terrifying, but we'll talk a bit more about like the other plague weapons when we get to them. Just keep that in mind. Like there is ways to make like Plague Marines basically kind of deadly and like very deadly in combat, which they used to be, but I think now they just got better, and you'll see why. And it's short second. Fire Fevers, they basically just add 1 to the attack roll and add 1 to the wound roll, which is for Help Root, which is I don't know, not that great. Help Roots are still not that exciting. Vermin Whisper just gives Terminators add 1 to attack roll, or hit roll, which is basically like kind of like we've seen that consistently for Terminator units, just kind of having a CP that just lets them hit better, you know. Now here's the big one, Haze of Corruption. So this used to be where, you know, back in the, in the previous book, the flails used to spill over damage, and they took that away because they gave them a fucking stratagem. And this doesn't just affect flails. This affects this is for every attack. It's limited to a Deathguard core unit, but that means like it's spillover damage for every weapon in the unit. So it's 2 CP. It's expensive, but like there is a lot of weapons in the Deathguard options which are like multi damage. So like, and making like the great cleavers like spillover damage, the flail spillover damage, the axis spillover damage. Like there's just so many things in there that spill over damage, and it's core, which I believe means also the Death Shrouds get it, the Terminators get it, and the Plague Marines really, because that's basically the only 3 options that get like multi damage options in combat and that are core. Eternal Hatred just means that against yeah, it's just +1 attack or +1 to attack wound roll. So no, it's good. Like +1 to hit and wounding in the shooting phase is good, but I don't know, 2 CPs just seems low. Like this is already a very CP intensive book because it gets worse as we go through in like CP costs. My personal favorite, like I was saying earlier, you make a Boxwalker unit for 1 CP. Do every time they roll a modified hit roll of 6 and inflicts a mortal wound on top of regular damage. But every time they do that, they also inflict 1 mortal wound to themselves, which is resolved after the fight phase is over. So you might kill yourself, but like I don't care. The Boxwalker. So having any kind of reroll to hit mechanic with that combo, it's just fairly strong. Yeah, so this is just making like just basically you can make I think you take 1 mortal wound and then you do 2d3 mortal wounds to the enemy unit if you're in 2 inches. It's nice because it's in your command phase. It requires you to be in engagement range, but it's in your command phase. So things like Satans that only take wounds per specific phase, that one is very good, assuming you can survive the Satan. So it is I love that it says excluding demon models, so it doesn't affect the demon princes or Mortarion. So it's just really like the poor like lieutenants and the actual lords. Unclean Machine Spirit, yeah, it just gives it full wounds for purposes of shooting and melee. So cool. Befouled Incubators, it just means when a model dies this character dies, and on a 6-up, he does 1 mortal wound. Let me reread this because this is maximum 3 mortal wounds. When a Deathguard can remove your select to fight until the end of the phase, each time an enemy model is destroyed, you basically can have exploding mortal wounds when it kills units models. That's actually pretty good for 1 CP. Like once against a lot of the characters in the book, it's almost guaranteed 3 mortal wounds against a unit. That is very good, and that one can actually work with Mortarion. So anytime Mortarion does more damage, great. Release the Toxin. Select 1 Deathguard character model from your army that is equipped with Relic of Decay. Start the battle, roll 1d6 for each movement 7. Oh yeah, so this is an interesting mechanic. Okay, so if you have a Relic of Decay, which is any of the relics, you can spend 2 CP to have it do exploding mortal wounds in the yeah, anytime, right? So yeah, select the command phase, start the battle. Yep, with 7 inches to 6. It's I don't know, like they're really trying to say like, hey, you want to do mortal wounds with Deathguard? It's all in the stratagem section. That's like literally what it comes down to. Use the stratagem in any phase when a Deathguard character from your army is destroyed. Instead of using any other rules that trigger when a model is destroyed, before moving them, roll 1d6 for each other units from 3. On 2 through 5 units suffers 1 mortal wound. On 6, that's 1d6. Okay, so it just explodes into mortal wounds and it dies. So this ground section of stratagems here, all the epic deeds, all about like mortal wounds. Got it. And then all the requisitions, just basically like extra warlord trait, extra relic, making a sergeant, get a relic, like cool. We typical. We know these. This one's pretty cool. I actually like this one a lot. It basically makes a chaos spawn unit get the disgustingly resilient, so ignoring 1 damage value of 1, and 1 damage out of all multi-damage option wounds, and then also gives him +1 toughness, which makes him toughness 6. So it's fairly like if you have chaos spawns, it's an interesting option. I think it has some play if you do a minimum unit of 3 and like they're going to be slightly obnoxious for as a flanking unit, because like a toughness 6 like model running around with the amount of attacks they have, it can be very annoying very quickly for a lot of people. Cyclic corrosion, just basically you can reroll 1s for wound roll even if you don't have the plague weapon. It's anytime so this kind of like works like Holy Trinity from Sisters. In your fight phase or your shooting phase, when a model of your army hits and attacks with a plague weapon that scores a hit against the enemy unit, you can reroll all wound rolls of 1, as if you all had. It's kind of, or I guess the Triac Stalker from Necrons kind of works like that, but for rerolls to hit. Select 1 Blight Holler, so Bleaching Fumes. Oh, this one is insane. That's right. When I first saw this one, I was like, that is really good. So basically, instead of reducing the weapon hit rolls, it reduces the number of attacks a weapon has in the shooting phase down to a minimum of 1. So like multi-meltas, going back to one shot against those things, which I believe are like you can make -1 to hit, or they're -1 to hit, the Blight Haulers. It just makes them like incredibly that much more durable against like very specific like shooting. I thought that seems like a very powerful stratagem to me if you were taking a unit, a bunch of Blight Haulers. But there's a repeating pattern here. A lot of stratagems in this book, they're all pretty good. I said majority of them are very good. Problem is you're going to be limited on how many CPs you're going to have in the game, right? You're still, even with Supreme Command Detachment and Mortarion, you're going to have it's going to be hard to see you get to like use all these effectively, because we're about to get to the really expensive ones. Blight Bombardments, 2 to 3 CP. You guys know what that is. It's just a one that just does like a bunch of AoE mortal wounds if it can. Then we have the Dead Walk Again, which is a very good one, and that one is basically you roll 7 dice on a 3-up. You get to bring back a Poxwalker into a Poxwalker unit. Assuming they survive, whatever they're getting hit at. But 1 CP just to bring back a bunch of models, 3.5 models about 4 models on average. It's very good. I like that one a lot. Cloud of Flies. This is the old can't shoot me unless I'm this. You only shoot this unit unless the targets are closer. Until the unit advances, each time a model or unit shoots, if that unit is not the closest eligible target or within 12 inches of that model, then until that shooting is resolved, that model cannot target that unit. In addition, until the end of that phase, if the selected unit has the bodyguard rule, it loses that ability. Yeah, so that one is nutty to me because, and there's a reason why it's 2 to 4. So if you're picking a Terminator keyword, it costs 4 CP to use to be basically the unit that can be that can be saved, and if it's another unit, it's 2 CP. So you can only shoot at that unit if it's if it's within 12 or the closest eligible target. Um, it's very, it's, you can make like a Plague Marine unit effectively untouchable for at least the first 2 rounds of combat as it's creeping in the center of the table. I was talking about how like um, basically spawns, which are going to be like got good flanker units. Even just basically just having them in the front and forcing your opponent to shoot at like these toughness 6 models to do anything is fairly powerful. Break their spirit. Yeah, that's right, Dan. It got much more powerful because of sequence it triggers. Yeah. Yep. It did get fairly expensive though. I mean, I think it was still 2 CP before then, but it was just like now, like the 4 CP for Terminators. It's just like, I don't think you'd ever take that on a Terminator unit. Break their spirit. That one is actually really interesting to me because if they destroy any infantry, if a Terminator unit destroys any Beast Swarm infantry and they subtract 4 from the leadership then from while, you can really force people to be in a situation where they have to spend CPs to ignore a break check, because there is some mechanics in the book where you can basically reduce their combat attrition rolls by another 1. So like, assuming like you got like a leftover unit of Necron Warriors, which is typically what we've been playing again a lot, and they're like down to like 4 or 5 men, and like that -4 leadership almost guarantees they're gonna fail the break check unless they roll 1. So they're probably gonna likely look to spend like 2 CPs to make sure they don't fail, because if you kill even if you kill 11 and there's 9 of them left, right, they do not want to take an attrition, especially at a -1 attrition test, which means a model flees on a 1, 2, or 3 instead of 1 or 2. So cool stratagem, requires Terminators, but I don't think it's gonna be very situational. Dark Ravings, you just basically make a fled black drone able to heroically intervene. Let's say it's good, but if you haven't played against enough armies of heroic intervention mechanics, you should get used to that a lot, because it's a very good, powerful tool in the toolbox. Deathguard Chaos Engine, yeah, just heals if it kills things. Flash Outbreak, this one's very good. It's expensive, but very good. Basically, what I was talking about earlier was when you have multiple contagion rules, the different contagion abilities, you can give a contagion ability to that unit until the next command phase. So like if you wanted to spread your Warlord's contagion ability, you could. And then on top of that, until the next command phase, it counts as the battle run being 1 higher. So it increases the range of your contagion rules. If you have any other play... Oh, you can give contagion to any unit. It doesn't have... So you could give like a Poxwalker unit contagion rules for that 1 turn, basically. It's not just limited to Stardust. So I guess that's the way you would basically bypass some contagion rules and limitations, since you can apply it to any Plague Company units. Might be that Plague Company units are only limited to 1. Their keyword might be limited to Stardust. Well, I guess we'll see in the data sheets. Just automatically explode vehicles. Cool. Foul Smokescreen. I don't actually know which Deathguard units have Smokescreen keyword, but we'll take a look. Just gives you it basically just gives you -1 to hit. For 1 CP, not bad. Yes, the Blightning. I like this one a lot. So you basically, what ends up happening is you can give 3 models in combat pistol 6 shots with their grenades. So when they're in combat, you can it's instead of being able to throw grenades at them, you just get 18 pistol shots with your grenades, which is, if you're bringing the character that increases the grenade rolls, it's fairly good. It's a pretty good. But I think because they use a grenade type, they might lose that orange. I guess we'll find out. Overwhelming Generosity, phenomenal stratagem. At 6 inches range to plague weapons. Like that's all basically all the flamer, and that's just really good. Just making flamers like effectively 18 inches is pretty terrifying. Valorant rounds. This basically makes your bolt weapons get benefit from the plague. They become plague weapons, which means it also works with the stratagem above. So when you can turn all your bolters into effectively plague weapons, meaning they reroll ones, and on top of that, if you wanted to for another CP, make them 30-inch range instead of 24. So that is an option. Yeah, storm bolters as well. I'm just not sure you'll ever use that often, unless because the problem is they're not like Space Marine with tactical doctrine and so forth. They're still only no rand bolters. So I'm not sure when they would come very useful. I mean, it is still pretty cool to combo. It's good. I don't think you should build like your list and designer like every turn, and that's what I'm gonna plan on doing. Disgusting Force. Oh yeah, this is basically allows you to make a Plague Burst crawl for that turn, like a flat 3 damage, and then it does mortal wounds to a nearby. Kind of like the Arc Lightning rule from stratagem from Necrons with Tesla guns. So it just basically just has exploding mortal wounds on top of like having a flat damage 3, which is going to be great against Gravis Marines. You're like, fuck you, Gravis Marines, and you're dead for each. All right. And then they added these things in here. And basically these deadly pathogens are kind of like the Cryptic Arcana and Necrons. They're just basically things you can take for characters and I think even sergeants. And they have physical points, and they just add like some incremental value add to some weapon that they have. There is nothing in here. Like, I guess Explosive Outbreak is very good. The AP, I believe that's only combat, Cody. Let me check, but I'm pretty sure that's only for melee. Yeah, it's in the fight phase, so it wouldn't trigger off the shooting attacks. That's why I'm not sure. Like that's that interesting. I think there is a character that does make plague weapons an additional rend -1. We'll take a look when we get to them. Yeah, I'm just like these are all okay. I'm just not sure I would fucking spend the points on them. Like I can't tell if any of them are like incredibly like, yeah, that's it. I guess this one over here, Unstable Sickness. Each time a model is made by this weapon and a model is destroyed on a 4-up, that model suffers a mortal wound. But you cannot be selected for the befoulments incubated, so you can't double stack the stratagem and that. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, there is a company that ups AP and it's a contagion, so it's an aura, but yeah, there's a lot of like cool things you can do with like heavy bolters and stuff. Like it's not horrible. I'm just not sure I want to drop those CPs into that combo. It's gonna be like one of those things that's like really like on a one-off. Like I really have no other option to like do any damage to this infantry unit. So, and I really need them to die, so I'm gonna invest in this account. Like it's not like when you play Space Marine where you're like, I know I want to spend these two stratagems in combination every turn to make this unit of heavy intercessors like incredibly deadly on the table, basically. Like I just don't see that as like the same mental state, right? It's just more, it's an option available. Like they're turning plague weapons, bolters into plague weapons is huge because Mortarion, and you guys have always seen Mortarion's data sheet from the previews, I'm assuming, but he does make plague weapons reroll to wound, as long as there's 12 inch, the units within 12 inches of him. Actually, we'll cover it's in the warlord section over here. So like it could making bolters reroll and wound is a thing that is kind of cool. I'm just not sure like bolt weapons are what does damage. All right, so Deathguard warlord traits. So we'll start with the important one here. So Mortarion starts with Revolting and Resilient, Reliving Plane, and Arch Contaminator, and Typhus starts with Shamble Rot, which is the Plague Company, his Plague Company one. Revolting and Resilient is just the old Disgustingly Resilient, which is just a 5-up shrug. Living Plague is, and this is a really good one, while an enemy unit is within 3 inches of this warlord, this unit cannot be affected by or abilities, excluding those are psychic powers of units from your opponent's army. Basically, it just turns off. It just turns off any auras affecting him. Now, keep in mind, this warlord trait is an aura. It's just located like weirdly in the title instead of in the description. I don't know. I think they did this. I think this is new because it didn't used to be that way. I think they used to say aura and then the rules. Right now they just put it in the title. So there's a couple stratagems in here and relics that increase aura range. So you could make this way bigger than 3 inches. There's even a power, I believe, that increases aura range. So you up to a maximum of 12. So you could make Living Plague a 12-inch aura, I think, or at least a 9-inch aura. I think in combination. And then his other one is Arch Contaminator, which is another aura, and it just basically gives you rerolls to wound for basically plague weapons. And then this is kind of limitation though, because the shooting one is only if you target a unit within 12. So I guess it wouldn't really work with if you're shooting like bolt guns at something 30 inches. But it is, it makes basically Mortarion like kind of like pseudo Goleman level of the pre-nerf, but it is kind of limited to plague weapons to reroll the wounds. And then you can only make one unit reroll all hits, and then he still has the aura reroll one stat for everything. Rotten Constitution, very good. Just I can see that one being taken a lot outside of Living Plague. Add one to toughness characteristic the Warlord, plus he ignores AP random 1 or 2. That's gonna be annoying. So there's Hulking Physique 2, which is basically permanent transhuman with an additional extra wound. So I guess with the stratagem that is you take 2 Warlord trait, I think you can take Rotten Constitution and Hulking Physique on the same character. So you could technically have like a toughness 6 or 7 with 7 wounds, and he ignores randoms 1 and 2 and has permanent transhuman. So that's, and let me double check that is the case, that you can take both 2 Warlord trait on one character. I believe so. Plague Chosen. Nope. You can only take 1 Warlord trait. You can give another Warlord trait to somebody else. Okay. So they can't do the stacking Warlord trait mechanic that Space Marines do unless you're basically Mortarion. Because, I mean, that would be insane to me. Like, Rotten Constitution plus Hulking Physique on a Blight Lord, or whatever his name is, the Lord of Contagion, would be terrifying. Like, he'd just be, like, one of the most removable objects on the table. Alright. Relics. The worst part of the book. Honestly, it actually really is. The Reapers of Glorious Entropy. Cool. Plague weapon. Any modified wound roll is a mortal wound. It's just that since it doesn't get the multi attacks that a Men Reaper would get. I don't see it. The Plague Skull of Gothilla. I love the hint there. I think they were trying to reference Godzilla, like the moth, whatever that moth is from Godzilla. Anyway, once per battle at the end of your movement phase, the bear can use this relic. If you want enemy unit 6, the bear rolls 7d6 for each 4 or 5. That unit suffers 1 wound for each 6. It suffers d6 mortal wound. That one's not too bad. It's like once per game for effectively like I think 4 or 5 mortal wounds. But it takes a really relic slot, so I don't think you'll see that often. Demon Toll, Nauseous Blightbringer model only. Once per battle start of your opponent's movement phase, the bear can use this relic. If it does so, select one immune in 6 inches until the end of the phase. Each time the model is selected to fall back, roll d6 on a 2-up. Cannot fall back, must remain stationary instead. Yeah, okay. Fulgare's Helm. Add 3 inches to auras. There we go. Now your 6-inch aura, Living Plague, or 3-inch aura Living Plague is now 6 inches, and it includes Contagion. So like all your Contagion rolls are an extra 3 inches. And then we have Putrid Periat. No, just basically gives an extra psychic. He knows an additional power, and then every time he manifests a power, he regains up to D3 mortal wounds once per battle. Or so he regains 3d3 lost wounds. Tallyman model only. When a friendly core unit, that one is actually very good. Oh wait, no, it's only range attacks. Never mind, not as exciting. It's just range attacks are not the most exciting things for core units. But anyway, it's just on Armor at 6, it scores hit rolls. It scores an additional hit, so you get exploding sixes for range attacks. If it was for melee too, that'd be delicious. Revolting Stench Vats, File Blightspawn model. This bear has a filing a aura of revolting stench. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of the bear, the unit cannot make use of any rules allowing to fight first. Never counts. Oh, basically just saying you strike after me. That's not bad. It's just I'm not sure I would take a file. I don't know. Often you'll see a fight Blightspawn though. Spurring Plate, save a 2-up. Each time an enemy fights after this, if a bear lost any wounds as a result of any attack, roll 2-up, it takes them. So it just does more wounds back if it takes any wounds. Plaguebringer. Plague weapon. Each time a model destroyed or resolved attack, it counts as 2. This is propose morale. Games Workshop, please stop making things that try to make morale matter. Like I mean, it does, but it's definitely a lot better than last edition. But it's still not quite to the point where. Okay. Contagion disciplines. All right. So mine's by Pestilence. So this is all this new psychic powers. As a warp value of 6, a mass attack 1 on friendly Deathguard unit within 18 inches until the start of your next attack. For each time an attack made by that unit, subtract 1. So just yeah. That's right, Cody. So mine's just okay. It's nice that it's a Deathguard unit, so you can give it to Mortarion or any like vehicles. So -1 hit is not bad. I'm just not sure. Like honestly, after reading the other powers, I'm way more involved in the other powers. Gift and Contagion. As a warp value of 5, if manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker until your next subtract 1 from the strength characteristics of models in a unit. The result of the Psyker was 8. Subtract 1 from strength and attack characteristic of the. I really like that one actually because I still think Deathguard are mostly going to be a melee army. So like anytime you not only would you be reducing their toughness by 1 for Contagion, but you also be like potentially reducing their strength by 1. Making things strength 3 is doesn't seem that interesting. But there is like some of your vehicles are toughness 6. So if you're doing a vehicle heavy assault army, like making like Space Marine strength 3 just makes it that they're incredibly durable to them now. Plague Wing. Plague Wing is a value of 6 if manifested like one enemy unit within 18 inches invisible to Psyker. Roll 1d6 for each model unit. For each 6, that model suffers 1 mortal wound. If the result of the Psyker rolls 9+, and the unit suffers on a 5-up. Good. I like that one's always like any type of like horde killing mortal wound mechanic. That one's always decent, especially against like Necron warriors and stuff like that. Combined with the Contagion ability and -1 toughness, it is very good. Purtress and Vitality has a warp charge value of 7 if manifested. Select one friendly Deathguard infantry within 18 inches of Psyker until the start of your next Psyker phase. Add 1 to the strength and toughness characteristic of those models. Hey, guess what, Plague Marines? Would you like to be toughness 6 and strength 5? Yeah, you would. So once again, lowering strength value of 1 down to 3, increasing toughness value up to 6, and also Plague Marines are like irremovable by most Marines. So pretty good. Curse of the Leper has a charge value of 6. It's manifest to select the closest enemy unit that is within 18 inches invisible to the Psyker. Roll 7d6 for each dice. Result that exceeds that model's unit's toughness. It suffers 1 more wound. Not sure about that one. I mean, I get that it stacks with Contagion and reducing toughness. I'm just okay. I'd rather have Gift of Contagion, to be honest, or like Plague Wing even. Gift of the Plagues. This one is the one I was talking about earlier. If manifested, select one friendly Deathguard unit within 18 inches Psyker until the start of your next phase. Add 6 inches to any Contingent ability. So yeah, all of a sudden so you can definitely make your Contingent rules with that relic. Plus that power, like on turn, effectively it's +9 inches to whatever the range is. So I think you can make like your character automatically +12 Contagion range from turn 1 onwards, because lords of the Contingent lords and so forth get a flat 3 inches to Contingent rules. So let's just skip over the Crusade rules because we gives a shit. And now we're actually gonna cover some actual rules they fucking talked about for the last few pages. So. They get plague weapons. What is a plague weapon? Reroll once to hit, or reroll once to wound, sorry. Remorseless. Each time a command tradition, ignore all modifiers. Great. So they only ever run away on 1. Malicious volleys. Basically, Bolter Doctrine. Disgustingly resilient. Reduce damage taken by 1. Great. Like, I know people are griping about losing the 5-up shrug, but honestly, this one is so much more valuable because things are meant to kill Space Marines do not kill Plague Marines. Heavy bolters, Like anything of damage too. Nope, doesn't kill them. Coming from AOS, this rule is Scaly Skins for Seraphon, Coalesce. It is a very powerful defensive rule in AOS, so I can only see that like carry over in 40k. And then we have the Contingent Abilities, which are basically, like I said, they're just subtract 1 toughness characteristic from a unit as long as it's within range, and the range of the contagion proceeds as turn goes on. 1 inch, 3 inches, 6 inches, 9 inches. So Mortarion starts at 5, starts at 4 for the purposes, so he's always 9 inches for contagion. And then, you know, with all the other mechanics to increase range of contagion, you can effectively on turn 1, I believe, have 12-inch range from like some of the like Typhus or some of the other characters because of all the stacking like relics and powers. Just like, you know, you can teleport strike. Cool story, bro. I'm going to go over data sheets, which I think are important. The Demon Prince, not a data sheet I would consider important. Sorry. Only 1 power. Like only a 5-up info. Like I'm sorry. He doesn't, nothing exciting about this. Typhus. I really like Typhus. The problem is I think he's just better served by the non-special character model version of him. He does have like the mortal wound generation thing. It's nice. He does make like Poxwalkers +1 tough, +1 strength, but I don't really think I care about them having +1 strength. I care about them having exploding 6s doing mortal wounds. Is what I care about. And then he still has that ability, like I said, at 3 inches of contagion range of all contagion ability for himself. So, and then he doesn't prevent you from having any kind of plague company rules because he's harboring a keyword, even if you take him in non-harbinger plague companies. The problem is he doesn't benefit from their rules. The Chaos Lord. So this is this is basically the old Chaos Lord models. Nothing exciting about there. Same thing over here. The new character, Lord of Virulence. Like, he's interesting because this. So in the Plague Company where you can make him damage 2, he becomes incredibly, like I said, in with the extra range, you could make him like 18-inch range with like 2d6 shots, strength 5, rerolling once to wound, automatically hitting, and then damage flat 2. So he has some potential annoying like mechanics. He also has the ability to basically reroll once to hit. He's just like any kind of Chaos Lord, and he has the an unmodified wound roll of 6 for core units with plague weapons, increase the AP by 1. So you could, like I said, with the bolter becoming plague weapons, you on the 6s, you at range, you could make them AP 1. I'm just not sure this is necessary, right? Like, not necessary, useful. Now, if you do put him in that plague company, that contagion is minus additional rent, so you could, he would be effectively range 2 with, and then making those bolters range potentially 2 as well. So there is a play. It's just like anytime you're fishing for 6s that's not mortal wounds, it tends to not be that exciting. All right, Lord of Contagion. I think this guy you almost see in every list at this point. Toughness 5, 6 wounds, 2 up save, 4 up invul. He can either have a man reaper or a plague scythe or a plague reaper or a man reaper in an orb of desiccation. I personally really just like the man reaper with the orb of desiccation, since the orb of desiccation is a grenade. And I wonder if the stratagem lets it just become flat pistol 6. But either way, it's just that. I just like the Man Reaper more for like some of the combats it has to deal with. Now the Plague Reaper is pretty cool because it's a flat 3 damage, so it like punks like Gravis Marines. But I think I'd rather have the anti-horde mechanic, so because he would have 10 attacks instead of like 5 against that. He still has the extra range to plagues. He has a 4-up invul base, and he rerolls once. So you could definitely give him the relic for an extra 3-inch range. You can give him living plague, so he turns off auras within 6. And then if he's the third company, he basically makes he turns off rerolls with plus 6 inches before the power. So on turn 2, he'd be 12-inch aura or right out of the gate without the power for like turning off rerolls. So and removing Overwatch. So I think this guy in that third plague company is incredibly powerful. Right at the gate. We got the Deathguard base sorcerer, and then the Malignant Plague Caster, like I said. He has the ability when the test was 7 or more, one closest enemy unit with 12 takes a mortal wound on top of the regular. He gets 2 powers, and that's about as exciting as he gets. Now here comes the best part. The Plague Marine rules are literally one entire page. They're like the level of writing as much as the Death Watch base troop. I do think it's funny the way they like. I feel bad for the guy who had to write this out, but like basically every 5 models you need, they can replace the bolt gun with like these options. Bubonic Axe makes a contagion, or one with 1 Mason Contagion and a Bubonic Axe, and then a Flail Corruption or Great Plague Cleaver. And it says 1 in every 5 models, so that includes the sergeants. You could technically give the sergeant a Great Plague Cleaver. They also all come, I believe, with a Plague Knife as it is. Yeah. So when you trade the bolter, it just gives you 2 Plague Knife. The big important thing is that Weapons of Death, a Plague Marine equipped with 2 melee plague weapons as an attack characteristic of 3. So they become 3 attacks base. So with that stratagem giving them an extra attack, they become 4 attacks, and then sergeant becomes 5. And then you're looking at like they're just gonna dish. Like even if you take a 10-man unit of them, I don't necessarily think you need to maximize all the combat weapon. But if you just take like 2 flails and then 1 great cleaver with the spillover damage they're gonna generate, they're gonna be pumping. Like the flails are 2 attacks for 1, so 4 attack model become 8 attacks. That's 16 swings. That's strength with the psychic power buff, strength 6 against toughness whatever -1, 2 Ren with 2 damage flat. Like that spills over. They're gonna be punking things. And then the Great Blade Cleaver is just like it's just D6 damage that spills over. This unit is going to be incredibly deadly in melee, like just with some supporting characters and stratagems. They do have an icon that lets them, when they shoot their bolt weapons, they automatically wound on a hit roll of 6, which is very powerful. But if you do that, it bypasses all the extra rend mechanics that you get. I don't think so, Valley. I think most of them are. I think some of them are like from like the Snap-on kits, but I could be wrong. It's been a long. I haven't assembled Plague Marines since the last edition release, so it's been a long time. I know the flails for sure are, but yeah, because you can see like all these models. They're basically, I think most of them are the Snap. Some of them are the Snap-on kit, like for sure that one. Yeah, then I think you should be fine for the most part. But like these, yeah, it's honestly it also opens you up for a lot of conversion options because they're very. I remember these models being very static pose. So anytime you repeat them, it looks kind of crummy. Yeah. I don't know. Like this is all of their incredibly high defensive, their movement modifier ignoring, because that affects like terrain, like trees and so forth. Is incredibly. I think they're just gonna be one of the most powerful marine equivalent melee, like consistent melee power, like because they have inbuilt rerolling 1s to wound. They have the ability to spill over damage. Like don't get me wrong, like Blood Angels, Space Wolves, all these new like the new kind of melee Space Marine armies are kind of like they're all about like hitting hard, hitting fast once. Right? I think they're just gonna be like these units are gonna be more like about getting in the thick of it and just duking it out forever. Oh, also, I forgot the extra attack is only for Plague Knives, by the way, so it would for the stratagem. So it would only affect the guys with the Plague Knives, but still, Plague Knives are Rend -1. Like they're not that bad. Yeah, the combat. I mean, it's a 21 point model with basically 10-point upgrades for combat, so it becomes 31. So a 10-man unit, if you just do three upgrades of weapons, a 10-man unit is effectively 240 points. It's actually fairly reasonable when you think about it, because you get 20 wounds that ignore 1 damage. They're toughness 5. They have it's built-in rerolling 1s of wounds mechanic. They're only movement 5, but they ignore all modifiers, which includes, like I said, terrain. Like it's really not 240 points for that level of melee prowess is honestly, it's a fairly affordable price point. I don't know. I find them. The thing is, like that 10-man unit can also become like much more effective and durable if you want to, either through stratagems or the lieutenants. So I'm not going to go over these guys, but lieutenants over here, We'll start with the one that like I think makes the most sense. So even though you lost a 5-up, you feel no pain. The Plague Surgeon does give you the ability to get 6-up Shrug on those guys. So and you can heal D3 lost wounds. In case you need to top off a guy every turn. But that already itself, like having a 6-up Shrug is already fairly good. Yeah, so Dan, with the flail, they do get 3 attacks. Yeah, so 3 attacks each becomes 6 swings from the flails in total. With the reroll mechanic of 1s to wound, you're almost every hit you're gonna get, and the -1 toughness, you're almost guaranteed a wound with every one of those flails. And then we had the Tallyman, just basically giving you, in your event phase, you can make 1 core unit, basically get +1 attack hit roll. So, yeah, Shrug equals feel no pain. Like any kind of like mechanic that ignores wounds is kind of a Shrug save. So the Surgeon still gives you the 6-up Shrug for Plague Marines instead of a 5-up. So they won't either they ignore damage, reduce damage taken by 1, but they still would have a 6-up Shrug with him. Then he basically gives him +1 to hit. And that's shooting as well, not just combat. And he also generates an extra command point if you roll on the 2d6, if you roll 7 or more. So Tallyman and them are pretty good at supporting Plague Marines. This guy is where it's at. So anytime you make Plague Weapons make a wound roll of a 6, it does 1 more wound on top of regular damage. So he would basically make all those Plague Knives attacks, all of those flail attacks, all of those Great Cleaver attacks. That's a mortal wound for each 6 to hit. With the rerolling 1s of wounds, like you're gonna be, it's a very effective like fishing. Like so, these 3 characters alone, which take 1 elite slot, can make like some Plague Marine units in combat, like even to an extent shooting, because with the adding +1 to hit and so forth. Because this one only affects the fight phase for the mortal wounds, makes them incredibly deadly. He also makes grenades. Armor penetration of -1 and damage flat 2. So, like I said, like think about that, and it says when a friendly, it's the grenade. It's not the grenade keyword; it's the type of grenade. So when you use the stratagem, when 3 grenades becomes pistol 6, that's 18 shots that hit on 2s with the Tallyman buff, wounding on strength 4 against toughness 3 because of the negative modifier to toughness. Probably winning on 3s, rerolling 1, add AP -1 and 2 damage flats. Like that's pretty deadly. Like you don't want to be stuck in combat with those guys, like at all. So I don't know. Like I said, like they're not that hard, fast, destructive unit. They're just kind of like, yeah, that's right, Dan. It's the old Blade of Purification. The only difference is Blade of Purification you can apply to any unit. This is limited to core only. So, actually, I wanted to check something. I wanted to see if the Cultist and the Poxwalker have Plague Company keyword. So the Poxwalker have Plague Company, but they're not core, so you can never buff them with that. And then the Chaos Cultist do not have Chaos. So really, the only thing he affects is basically Plague Marines. The other characters, like the only thing, like this one I'd say like is potentially useful just because he reduces the attrition rolls if you're playing kind of like a leadership enhancing army, and then he also it makes him +1 inch movement, and so cool. But the problem is this like -1 a cast is only for units within 6 is pretty lackluster. At the start of the fight phase, let's read this. You can select one enemy unit within 3 inches. That unit is on. Oh, it's basically the guy from the just turns off, makes people fight at the end of the combat phase, basically. Like and they make him only 3 inches, so it feels like it's very easy to dodge. Yeah, I'm not super excited about that. Blight Lord Terminators. Nothing's really changed for them, like at all, which is sad, but that's fine. Like at least they're all their attacks can also spill in combat because of the stratagem if you want them. There's nothing to write home about here. The Death Shrouds. The problem of one of the downside of the cool thing about the Death Shroud. First, I'll start with the cool thing. They can give you a charm contagion, which increases the range of their contagion ability. Cool. But they, I think, fundamentally speaking, they haven't changed at all. I did wish their scythe attacks were somehow a little bit better, a little bit more different. Nope, no more combi plasma spam, Dan. You didn't really see them before, and now you're really not gonna see them that much. I don't think. I don't know. For me, they just feel like Clips versus Plague Marines, because the only valuable stratagem they get is the +1 to hit stratagem, and the -4 leadership stratagem. So if you're playing that whole gimmicky morale test mechanic, then sure, the Death Shrouded Blightlord Terminators might be interesting. The fact that the Death Shrouds are at least hitting on 2s and the stratagem additional -1, so even if they're doing their big cleave attack, they're going to be hitting on 2s no matter what. I don't know. Nothing's really changed for them. It's not like I'm not excited about them. I just don't they fundamentally don't introduce anything else, I think, to the game. Hellbrutes haven't not fucking changed. I don't know. Just nothing to write home about here. Possessed are in here. They have Play of Company. They are core, so they would benefit from a lot of rules. They have Contagion. How many attacks? They have 4 attacks with Horrifying Mutations. It's not bad. I'll have to look how many points they are. The problem is so one of the big thing I forgot to mention earlier is none of the Plague companies basically give OPSEC, double OPSEC or specialized OPSEC. There's nothing that does give specialized OPSEC. They don't even have a stratagem that turns off OPSEC or a mechanic that turns off OPSEC. So the big problem I'm running, I can see already right out of this book, is that for missions, it's MSU Plague Marines, or some big chunky Plague Marine squads, but that's the only the fact of Blight Lords, there's no way to make Blight Lords or Death Shrouds OPSEC. It's just even more of a case for not taking him. Chaos Spawns, like I said, I like them because you can make them toughness 6 and you can give them ignore damage of 1. They're so obnoxious for the amount of points they are, and that stratagem, a unit of 3 can be one of the most obnoxious flanking unit in the game, to deal with backfield units. And then they're pretty fast and lets you. Do they have the infantry? No, they're not infantry. They're beasts, so they can't go through walls, but they can just be a really obnoxious. Yeah, Andrew, they are, but for the stratagem, it's 2 CP. I don't know if I want to spend 2 CP to make them all toughness 6. I think I might as well just spend 1 CP to make 3 toughness 6. Now, all of these here actually are quite phenomenal. The Plague Burst, because of the stratagem making flat 3 damage, incredibly useful. But I think these 2 here are really where it takes the cake. I mean, they were already good before, but now they're just I don't know. I feel the way Disgustingly Resilience changed makes them even more durable. Yeah, the 5-up shrug is oh, we lost a 5-up shrug, that was good. But the whole especially on these things, yeah. So they already the -1 is only for melee. Okay, so instead they can reduce the number of shots they get targeted with by 1, which is already pretty good. Having toughness 7 with basically ignoring at least 1 damage result, they're still gonna be fairly hard to shift off the table. Problem is that they're still not OPSEC. That's gonna be a consistent problem. It's do they do enough damage to remove OPSEC units? I think the fetid Blood drones might actually do that, because the Flesh Mower is so incredibly terrifying. Now that they're hit on 3s, they move 10. They do not have Relentless, so they don't ignore modifiers, but they do have Fly, so I guess they. Yep. And then let's see. They're not core, so they don't get the spillover damage, but what is that, 12 attacks with Flesh Mowers in combat at strength 7, and then you're gonna be Contagion Nurgle, so you're gonna be -1 toughness against them. Yeah, they're fucking terrifying. They're winning Space Marines on 2s, rerolling 1s, right? Because they're plague weapons. Yeah, so they're gonna be hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. Yeah. That's what I imagine, Andrew, because fundamentally speaking, a 5-up, it's just that Disgusting Resilience can have that shift, that swing, because you could roll above average. So in some scenarios, it pays off more than like the downturn. The downside is like you die faster. You could die faster, but if you die faster, usually it's like you're not gonna feel necessarily bad about it. But if you just live way past your point, it is just like it can have a fundamentally important shift to the game. So consistently, instead of having just the same amount of complete durability, statistical durability every game, it's just it removes the feels bad factor than when you beat the odds or you roll under the odds. So I like that change. The fresh mode, yeah, it's fucking terrifying. Yeah, these things are probably gonna be we're probably gonna see at least 1 or 2 units in every plague guard army. I imagine they're just like, because remember we talked about earlier in the game about how the secondary works for them, and just having things that can basically be on board. I don't know if it was limited to core or infantry. I don't think they were. Let me check. I don't think the secondaries were. No, it's just a start. Bubonic Astartes. Did they have the Bubonic Astartes keyword? No, they do not. They do not have that. So they don't count for that second name. Okay. So really, they really want you to take MSU Plague Marines. I think that's how I can read that. Plague Cross Crawler, not really change. I mean, other than its shift to more to the shrug save. It's just like that's a lot of the fact that like it can go up to damage 3 now on the mortar is so good, because you're gonna. It's the one thing you're gonna like see a lot more is heavy intercessors, and like blocks of 10 heavy intercessors. Having to worry about that thing on the table is like very significant. Just having, the keyword, like they've learned that lesson from the years of AOS, and they've really fine tuned it now to make sure like there's a very specific combination they want you to be able to take and not really necessarily abuse. Honestly, anything else is just kind of like the typical defilers. I wish the defilers were cooler. I mean, they're getting buffs, but they're still I still don't see a reason to take them in the Deathguard list because of all the other demon engines. Mortarion, you guys already seen this data sheet on the Warmer community page. I'm not gonna point anything more than like the fact that like his Host of Plague thing is for like plague companies. So you could play like the Flamer Day Company, take Mortarion, and then take still the remove Overwatch and rerolls power with him in the army. So if you wanted to play do the Flamer build and still have one melee element and it's Mortarion, there you could and still benefit from that plague company, which is really cool. Like I like the idea of like you can take the contagion from the plague companies and not the so not only does he get 4 warlord trait effectively, but you can take the Gloaming Bloat, which I think is the most insane one for Mortarion, because A, removing Overwatch, and B, removing all reroll mechanics. Fucking phenomenal. And he counts as turn 4, so it's a 9-inch contagion aura right at the gate. I think the Mimic Malinifier actually has a place in the game. I actually really like what it does. The question is, how many points is it? Let's find out. How many points is it? The only downside is you have to take a fortification and a detachment. 75 points. That's pretty spendy. But I actually really like what it does for 2 reasons. A, where you can place it. So you can place it as 12 inch, I believe it is 12 inches away. Yeah, from the enemy deployment zone and enemy units. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like if the deployment zones are like the typical way, you can basically start that thing almost like near the center of the table, unless your opponent has a bunch of infiltrators. But since it's set up at the same time as the rest of your opponent's stuff, and it's a fairly small model, it's not that big, so you can definitely place it around near in placement, specific terrain placement. It really works well with the that secondary I was talking about, where like if a unit if objectives are in reach of contagion by the end of the game, you get points for if all of the objectives are in range of contagion at the end of the game. Because I don't think a lot of people are going to spend resources dealing with this thing during the game. And it's fairly annoying to kill with toughness 8 and a 12 up save, and disgustingly resilient. But just having the 75-point investment to make sure that you have a center objective or another objective that's always going to be in range of contagion means that you're almost guaranteeing yourself points from that secondary. And then, you know, it has some cool abilities, like you know, other than the Contingent Rule always being like, you know, turn 4, it's just like it gives units light cover, and as long as they're whole even 6 of it, and if it's already getting light cover, then it subtracts -1 to hit. And I believe that's also in melee. Yeah, the -1 to hit is just receives the benefit light cover. It also receives then each time an attack is made. Yeah, so even in melee, there'd be -1 to be hit at. So I don't know. I think that one is 75 points is very cheap for investment for basically making sure, like, because the way they're deployed, they're 2 models technically. This one can be, I think, wholly even 12. No, within wholly even 6 inches of it. So you can have a big footprint to carry over and to cover the board, at least 1 or maybe potentially 2 objectives with Contagion. So making sure that you cannot be effectively you don't have to worry for them at the end of the game, because like I said, like for 75 points, they're pretty unshiftable unless you really dedicate some resources to them, and nobody's going to really want to. And then, like, that's 2 objectives you don't have to worry about for that secondary, on top of all the other bonuses it provides you. So, and let me check the secondary. Yeah, it's any score 4 victory points at the end of the battle if every objective marked in the battle is within contingent range of a contingent ability that units of your army have. So this secondary is going to be, I think, the one that gets taken a lot, especially if you play MSU, play a Deathguard. Yeah, so there is it's called the contagions, and effectively, it's not all your units have this rule, but most of them do. It's called Contagions of Nurgle. And basically, it's an aura that that reduces the toughness of enemy units by 1, and it basically on turn 1 it's 1 inch, turn 2 3 inches, turn 3 6 inches, turn 4 9 inches, and then some characters either count as turn 4 like Mortarion in that furnace, so they from the get-go, so they're always 9 inches, and then some other characters add range to it, or powers or relics that affect aura range would affect it. So like I was describing earlier, like the Lord of Contagion and so forth, can basically on turn 1 be like 10-inch range for his Contagion rule, and then on turn 2 is 12 inches with like a relic and that's it. Yeah, just a relic, because it adds +6 or +3, and he's +6 or +3 himself. So yeah, you're 7 and then 9 and then 12 by turn 3. So, and then there's a psychic power that also increases the range of Contagion by 6 inches up to a maximum of 12. So you can basically, like, yeah, you can filth up the board effectively. There is a secondary where you're basically desecrating secondaries as objectives as well, called Rotten Constitution. No, wait, no, that's not that's not the right page. Spread the Sickness, where basically it has to be a Deathguard infantry, and then you basically take an action on top of its objective. Now you notice though, like, there is no stratagem in the book that lets you take an action and act normally. So I think actions are not necessarily highly, like, unless you're doing a lot of MSU, like, they're not worth like taking in this army, because there's never a way for you to ignore that. There's not even a play company that lets you ignore actions and move, like, nothing. So yeah, this one just basically if you get 3 victory points for each objectives you basically desecrated. Let me switch back to non-presentation mode. Hello. I'll take any other questions. We're basically up to, it's been almost an hour and 20 minutes since I started covering this book. If any you guys want any kind of specific question that you want to see, let me know. Yeah, that's right. They got to poop real hard. Just the overall, like, stacking debuff mechanics, plus the easy accessible removal of reroll mechanics, for me is like, and just turning off auras, to be honest, incredibly like, it's just it's gonna be an incredibly powerful like tool against a lot, especially Marines. I think Marines and other Imperial armies. Because to be honest, most of the who benefits a lot from rerolls is Imperium armies. Like just they just turn off that stuff so fast. Like as I was having a debate earlier with some of my other friends about is Mortarion worth it or not. I think he like with since he has a 5-up shrug, reduces damage by 1. It's toughness 8. He's incredibly durable to incredibly hard to remove off the table, but he's still not on there's transhuman mechanics still really counters him pretty hard. And then a Satan just punks his ass. So, well, not as any Satan, just mostly the Nightbringer. It's just I don't know. It's unlikely to me that like Mortarion is necessarily worth it. But the fact that he can just move pretty far down the table, and then is all of these auras that he can take, basically turn off things. Like he might just be worth it just from the turn off mechanic. But you could also do that same combo with like a deep striking Terminator Lord. So perhaps it's not that valuable because like I said, like if you deep strike one of those Chaos Lord of Contagion, whatever, with that combination of Relic plus Warlord trait that turns off rerolls and so forth, and you and the opponent isn't able to deal with him, he's going to be literally like you could potentially position him on the deep strike to block off an entire army's mechanics. So I don't know. There's just a lot of power I can see right out of the gate in this book. So we'll see. We'll see how it does. I think MSU Plague Marines is probably the best way to go this book, just because of how the secondary is designed. The one that basically almost guarantees you 15 points. Like I mean, it's upward. Like it's not an auto guarantee, but I feel like it's very hard for a Plague Marine player not to get like at least 12 to 15 points on that secondary. So yeah. So its infections are they're not really infections. So their plate companies all have a unique warlord trait, which is a special additional rule to the contingent rule. It's basically another aura rule, and only the plate companies have those. And it's a warlord trait. So you basically the worst part is you can't take a generic warlord trait and that as well, right? So and there's no stratagem that lets you take 2 warlord traits, because if there was, it'd be pretty nutty actually when we talked about it earlier, because there's 2 warlord traits you can make like a character literally on almost near borderline unkillable. But there is each plate company has its own special unique infection, which is a warlord trait, and that's the one I was talking about. The third play company, Cody, turns off all rerolls to aid, all rerolls to wound, and Overwatch, and set to defend, if you're in range of it. And I believe it uses the same table as infection, or contagion table. Let's double check. Yeah, it's a contagion. Yeah, it uses the contagion table for range. So, yeah, those are the infections. And Mortarion he can pick one at the start of the game. He can pick whatever contagion he wants to affect, like from the plate companies. So not only does he, I mean, they could. I don't see why you can't. It's just if you get a little bit creative with some green stuff, you can definitely model your do some conversion of your chosen and just use them as plague marines. I don't see why you couldn't. To be honest, it'd be a lot better than using only the static pose plague marines sometimes. You probably could get like some nice little nurgling models too, and just stick them on the models on the bases as well to give them that more Deathguard-y feeling. Because at the end of the day, like the plague companies could be like just a Nurgle Chaos faction. Talking, blowing up some flying units, infecting enemy units. I don't like. There's powers where you can do mortal wounds when you kill things. Like, I don't know. Like, see, the problem is like, Dan, the way I would describe it, I think Plague Deathguard players were, at least from my personal experience playing against them, and playing with them from last edition, is that Deathguard was designed. People would bring Deathguard armies to table opponents. That was kind of like when you saw like for a while, you remember like the 9 plague crawlers and like all of that and all the demon engine builds. Like they're designed to just, they're extreme list designed to just table your opponents. The problem is that's not how 9th edition works, or this edition works at all. It's just literally designed on board presence and removing key things and taking tempo away from your opponent. Like that's how the game is won. At least that's the way I've been winning, and that's the way I've been playing. It's just all about taking tempo and having board position. And especially with the new secondary they introduced with Deathguard, like you have to play that style. So the idea of like just designing your list to like thinking like, oh no, we went down in power level because like some of our killing power went down. It didn't really go down. They're just like a lot of it just got shifted to secondaries, or sorry, stratagems. Like now you have to make like an actual dedicated choice if you have to spend CP or not. I don't see how you could look at this book and say, oh, they went down in power. I don't know. Like there's some just the only thing like I said, the only 2 things this book lacks is no stratagem for taking an action and shooting. I cannot believe that Space Marine factions just do not have a stratagem that does this. It's stupid. Like if you're gonna give it to Astartes, like you better give it to every Astartes, even Chaos ones. It's kind of stupid that they don't, especially Deathguard, since they're kind of like supposed to be like the slow rambling horde. Like they should be able to take an action with no penalty. To be honest, that should. There's not. I don't even think there's a blade company that lets them do this. And then secondly, the only thing additionally they lack. Oh my god, I forgot I lost my train of thought. It will come back to me. I don't know. Plague Marines, like I said, 240 points for a combat focused Plague Marine unit that you can just basically like that's the thing. Like if they're not threat vectors in your army, that 240 point Plague Marine unit isn't going to get like necessarily targeted all that much, especially if you have like all those fucking drones just buzzing about and like being in your opponent's face. And the fact that you can spend stratagems to give them heroic intervention, yeah, so that's the big problem with the book. It's just like there's so many ways to make Plague Marines so damn terrifying on the table, or really almost any unit in that book, but it requires like CP investment. And I mean that's the way it's been for most of the new books, really. It's just like you have, I guess arguably the Necrons, I'd say it's the one book perhaps that doesn't have like that much like CP stratagem combos that like make them like that much better. But I don't know what's there to gripe about Plague Marines. Like it's just, do I think they're getting outclassed by Terminators? No. Like the Terminators are I think almost double their point cost, if I remember correctly. Oh, that's right. The other thing is they lacked was the ability to turn core units into OPSEC. Like either through an aura, through a plague company, like that. Being limited to only Poxwalkers, Cultists, and Plague Marines as being OPSEC, yeah, that's a problem. Like so, like the whole point of like if you're making the argument like, well, Terminators are better, yeah, but they're not OPSEC. So like it doesn't like once again it's about board control and tempo. Like if you can't take an objective away from your opponent, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like if your only play is to just kill them, yeah, and it's killing them requires a bunch of random elements such as dice being introduced. You're not gonna have a good play. I'd rather be in a position where I can just move to an objective and just take it away from my opponent more than like require them. Yeah, Poxwalker are OPSEC, but Poxwalkers are, you can't make the crazy durable Poxwalker block anymore. That's just not a thing. depends. It's not necessarily bigger one wins. It's the if you block one from getting on the objective, they're forced to get in combat with you. Because if you completely body block an objective, you can't move on it. So even if you shoot the unit, you still can't get on the objective because you don't have a movement after shooting unless you charge. So you'd have a Poxwalker unit charging. A Poxwalker unit charging Plague Marines is like we're really almost any opposite is not necessarily going to have a good day. Let's see. So 20 Poxwalkers is 100 points. So a pretty cheap investment. But they're only toughness 4 with no save. They can't even get cover saves because they start with a 7-up save. So even if they're in light cover, they still only I guess they get a 6-up save. So any range just punches through them. There is no way of making them toughness 5. I don't think. I don't even think the psychic power is limited to only very specifically bubonic infantry. Deathguard infantry. So you could technically make them toughness 5 with psychic power. So there's still a way to make them slightly resilient. It can never take an action. Yeah. Like the fact Poxwalkers can never take an action unless it's okay. They have one they can take. It says unless it's this one. Which one is it? Please tell me it's the one from the secondary. Spread the sickness. Oh, okay, thank God. So they can still do spread the sickness, which is about the only action worth taking. Yeah, they only have a 6-up shrug. They don't have but it's not like the discussing resilience would matter. The new one at least would matter for them because they're only one wound a pop, so it wouldn't really drastically matter. But they do have a 6-up shrug, so you could with a power make them toughness 5. I don't know, man. I'd rather make a 10 Plague Marines toughness, like with the combination of the furnace and that power, toughness 6 Plague Marine with basically at least always having light cover or light cover and -1 hit. Yeah, that's bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if I was gonna take a battalion of Deathguard, I would probably take 2 units of Poxwalkers and 2 units of 10 Plague Marines, or go for like all MSU Plague Marines. So yeah, I don't even think. Did they ignore Battle Shock or Morale? Sorry, did they lose that? No, it is automatically passed. Oh, thank God. So like they kept that. Thank God, because oh my God, this unit would be absolutely hot garbage if it lost that rule. You even heard me earlier, Dan, talking to me like I love the stratagem of the Poxwalkers, like 6 is to hit, do a mortal wound. That's so powerful. That can be that for 1 CP investment. That's so nice. I mean, they take a mortal wound too themselves, but they're 2 attacks flat, so we're talking about like 40 swings in 20 minutes. I mean, it's never gonna be 20 minutes by the time it gets there, but like 40 swings is pretty scary. Mortal wound. Yeah, I guess you could probably use them as spawns, Valley Dweller, for sure. No. All right, guys, I'm probably gonna call it now. We're 90 minutes in the show. It was a pleasure. I'm gonna be doing more of these as more books come out. The next book probably will be an AOS book. It's gonna have to be the what's it called? I think the Slanesh book is the next one that drops. And hopefully Dark Angels are right after that, because I would love to see some Dark Angels. Thanks, everybody, and have a lovely rest of your weekend.